about what's going on inside them psychologically based on their behavior.
Attribution theory studies various parts of the attributional process. So one can ask, how do you know? How do you know, for example, that you, John, refused your dating request because he finds you unattractive? How do you know he wasn't studying that night? Now, he might tell you, well, I have to study, but do you really believe it? You know, how do you make inferences about causality?
According to researchers, we judge people differently if we perceive them as having control over events, particularly those with negative outcomes.
Let's say you're late for a date, and I say, Jane, you're late, where were you? And you say, I decided to watch television a little longer. What? That's controllable by you. Anything that's controllable by you elicits anger and punishment. But if it's not controllable by you, your mother called and you had to take her to the hospital. I have a very different reaction because the cause is uncontrollable.
If somebody says, hey, nice dress, if I think, gee, they did that, they said that, their motive was to compliment me, they like me, then I treat the person very differently than if I say, that was sarcastic, she doesn't really like me. I behave very differently. So that the kind of attribution that we make about another person's characteristics then determines how we behave toward them.
Social psychologists have found that we tend to attribute the behavior of other people to internal personal characteristics that they might possess. At the same time, we downplay the effects of external factors that might actually play a role in their behavior. This happens so frequently that the phenomenon has been given a name. It's called the fundamental attribution error.
When we perceive other people and ask ourselves the question, why did they do what they do? There tend to be two broad answers. We can either say they did it because that's the kind of person she is, or she did it because of something in the environment around her caused her to do it. So you get a situation such as a salesperson who comes up and, hey, how you doing? You know, big, you might say, exaggerated version of a salesperson, and most of them aren't that way in reality. Well, why are they being friendly to us? A, he just happens to be a really nice person. It's his personality, something inside him, or no. He's after the money. That's why he's doing it. And the fundamental attribution error is the bias that we have to attribute a person's behavior more to personal things. We tend to think, why is this person being friendly? Because he likes me, because he's a nice person. We think of it in personal terms, and we don't put enough emphasis on the role that the situation played.
The fundamental attributional error can also be applied to my work in terms of the condition failure model, why African American children underachieve. If a child fails, then the assumption is the child is failing because they're culturally deprived, because they come from a single-parent home, because they're genetically inferior, or some combination, etc., because they have some kind of personality deficit. So by researchers, by psychologists, sociologists, educators, there's a tendency to consistently and continuously commit this fundamental attributional error, rather than to think, I'm not using the right technique as a teacher, the educational environment may be hostile to these children because they don't see anybody who looks like them, the reinforcements might not be proper for these children. So we have a tendency to look at the victim rather than looking at the situation.
In making attributions, social psychologists have found that we not only consider internal and external causes, we also determine how stable they are. For example, if a waiter spills water at their table, James might comment that the waiter is clumsy. This is an internal, stable cause, one that the waiter cannot change. On the other hand, Julie might say that the waiter was just distracted. This would be an internal, unstable cause. In other words, purely situational. However, if James were to attribute the waiter's behavior to external forces, he might blame the bad lighting, a stable cause. An external, unstable cause might be that the glass was in an awkward position, making it hard to pour into without spilling. Attribution theory was so widely accepted that for a period of time, it dominated the field of social psychology.
Attribution has been applied to almost every theory in social psychology, almost every theory. For instance, cognitive dissonance. Okay, cognitive dissonance, as formulated by Fessinger, was that it was a motivational process. That when two things came together, let's say a value that we hold, let's say we have a value to remain a virgin until we marry. And let's say that on the other side, we behave in the opposite way. Well, now you have discomfort because you have the value to be a virgin, but on the other hand, you have now had intercourse. Now, you should feel discomfort from that. And there are many ways to resolve that discomfort. And the discomfort is motivating us to resolve it because we don't want to feel this discomfort. We can either change the value or the attitude, or we can say, I'll never do that again until I marry.
A change in our attribution can also reduce the cognitive dissonance caused by a situation. If we attribute our behavior to external unstable forces, as opposed to internal stable forces, it's easier to believe that undesirable behaviors can be avoided in the future.
In looking at the fact that we all make attributions and there are certain patterns that occur among all people, for instance, the fact that we place objects and people into categories in order to simplify our environments, and that this often leads to stereotyping. Well, we can use this knowledge as a tool to begin to reduce prejudice, to reduce stereotyping, to facilitate interpersonal relationships between different ethnic groups, to have men and women be able to take the other person's point of view. And it just can be used as a vehicle for better social relationships.
In any case, attribution can have a strong influence on our thoughts and feelings about ourselves and other people.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it very much.
All right. I had a good time, too.
Yeah, it was great. It's nice meeting you.
Yes, you too.
And yet, even if everything goes right in a social situation, there is always an element of unpredictability in our reactions to the people we meet.
What did I think of James? I think he's a really nice guy, and I really like his heart. He has a real heart for children, and I think he's like a big teddy bear where he really feels with kids and reaches out to them. Thinking back to his picture, what was similar to what I thought from the picture is I was right on as far as him liking wrestling, football, that he enjoys life and seems to be pretty easygoing and a people person. I think I'd see him as friends, and probably romantically it would be more just as friends. There wasn't that attraction there for me because we probably come from different worlds, and what attracts us to each other would be different.
I thought the date went actually better than expected. I thought she'd be a lot more reserved, and I would have to do a lot of the conversational part going, but she got right in there, and just we hit it off good. I thought she was a very intelligent woman. I thought she was a good conversationalist, very friendly, charming, and she actually looked a lot better in person than she did in the picture.
I think I expected him to be more hard, like a construction worker would be, or somebody like that, where when I started to get to know him a little bit, I really found that he's not hard at all. He's a sweetheart on the inside.
I found that she's a little more country, I'm a little more rock and roll, but she's, like I said, she's a very nice person, very nice person.
Social psychology teaches us that humans can and often do judge a book by its cover. Yet by studying social psychology, we can learn how to form accurate perceptions of each other and possibly come away with something we didn't have before, like a new friend.
She was fun to be with. I had a great time. I have no regrets, no complaints.